We're now on Daf Ayin Hamid Beis, and we are studying the Shita of Rav Chizda. And Rav Chizda says that the Shita of the fetus is necessary as the mother Shita would not be matir the fetus because the mother is a treifa. And the Shita of treifa cannot be matir the basar. Now, comes along Rav Chizda, and he says that once you shech this fetus that reached its full term, and it's chai, then all the laws of a geshachtera animal apply to this fetus. Number one, you have to give the kohen, and then a mace. If this animal were to die before you got a chance to shecht it, then it's tar militame b'masa. It cannot be mitame tumas nevela. Tumas nevela is even b'masa, even without direct contact with the tumah. And the reason for that is because although the shechita of the mother, who is a treifa, would not be matir the fetus, but it does remove the status of tumah as far as tumas nevela is concerned from the fetus. Amalei Rabba says to Rav Chizda, ton shechita. You're involved in a logical contradiction because ton shechita, you're ruling that the fetus needs its own shechita, and the shechita of the mother is not meaningful for the vlad keman who you following Rabbi Meir, because again, what you're saying is that according to Rabbi Meir, you go ahead and you shecht the fetus after it stands on all four, and that's going to be matir the achila of the basar of the fetus. That has to be the shita of Rabbi Meir, because Rabbana would say that you cannot be matir the basar of the fetus after it's born based on its own shchita. And why is that? Because the shechita of the mother, according to the Rabbanon, was meaningful for the Vlad, even though she is a treifa, but it's a meaningful shechita to be mitayr midei nevela. And this is based on Rav Ami that we had on Amud Aleph, that according to the Shita Rabbi Yehuda, which is the Shita of the Chachamim, that a full-term fetus of a healthy animal just one second. According to Rabbi Yehuda, who says that you don't need shechita because the fetus reached its full term. And why is that? Because the shechita of the mother is meaningful for the vlad. But here that the mother was a treifa, and the shechita of the vlad would have to be the shechita of the mother. But the shechita of the mother can't be matir the fetus because it's the shechita of a treifa. The mace, tahar militame b'masa keman. Now, I don't get it. Now you're crossing political boundaries here because you were going according to Rabbi Meir, but now you're saying that it's tar militam b'masa. So that's based on keman kirabbanan. Rabbanan who say that the mother shechita, even though it cannot be effective to be matir the achila consumption of the basar, but nevertheless, it is meaningful to be mitayr midei nevela. So Rav Chisda first says, look, buddy, don't attack me, attack a brisa. I didn't discover America here. Rab Chia has it explicitly in a brisa. Hashokras a treifo mosa ba ben tishachai is ton shchita. It requires shchita, which means that we're going according to Reb Meir. And yet, right? V'chayav b'Yisrael, v'chayav meis tar. Oh, but then it says in meis tar milatame b'masa ton shchita keman is kirabi meir, and in meis tar milatame b'masa is kirabanan. So you yourself are in the same quandary as I am, because although you can argue with me, but you can't argue with the Brisa. And Rav is going to say, as far as the Brisa Reb Chia is concerned, I could ani yachol istader. Holo kasha. Reb Chia, the Brisa Reb Chia is talking about him. Kvar matzo meska omar. The fetus was already dead inside its mother's womb. And in such a case where it was dead inside, even Rab Meir would agree that the shechita of the mother, because now the fetus is not a separate entity, which is Rab Meir's argument, his logic, but rather it's part of the body, it's another limb in the body of its mother. And therefore the shechita of the mother would certainly be mitar midei nevela, anything inside of it, anything excluded in its body, not only the mother's body, but also the fetus. Ela l'didach kasha. Right? You didn't make any distinctions between whether it was dead or whether it was alive. Amalei. So Chizur responds to Rabba, l'didinami lo kasha arba simonim achsha le'rachmana. Meaning that even though I'm going to agree that ton shchita because of the two simonim of the fetus, but nevertheless, it's mitar midei levela because you have the other two simonim of the mother. One second, sorry. Gisolik Reb Zera, when Reb Zera went up to Eretz Yisrael from Bavel, Ashkeche Rav Asi, either Rav Asi found him or he found Rav Asi, the Yosef V'Komer Leila Shmaitata, Amalei Yasher. Yasher means well said. V'chein Omer Reb Yochanan. So after Rav Asi presented this in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, then Rav Zera responds and he says, Michal de Polgal le Rab Shimon ben Lakish. Normally, when you quote a halach in the name of Rabbi Yochanan in Eretz Yisrael, it means that Reish Lakish argues. So Rav Asi says, no, don't prove from the fact that we didn't quote Reish Lakish as arguing that he argues Misha Havi Shoyle. Maybe Reish Lakish was thinking it over, and Shasikle, and right now he didn't respond, even though he really disagrees. Or he could be another alternative, Mishta Havishasi. He was too busy drinking his water, and therefore when Rabbi Yochanan was teaching this ruling, Shasikle, he didn't say anything, but really, it's quite possible that he disagreed. Rab Shimon Shizuri Omer Afilu. Even if you find the fetus that's alive, now he's born, the fetus is born and it grows to the year 5 years is plowing fields. The shechita nevertheless was mitired, and the shechita itself is matir achila. Again, we're not talking about the mother being a treifa. And basically, you could take this cow that's 5 years old, that's plowing a field, shoot it through the head, and eat its meat. You don't need shechita. It had already the shechita of its mother. So Gemara says, Hainu Tanakama. So what is the machlokas between Reb Shimon ben Shizuri and the Tanakama? Omer of Kahana, Hifris al Gabi Karka Ikabe night. The machlokas between the Tanakama and Reb Shimon ben Shizuri is when the animal steps out of the womb of its mother and it's walking on four feet. Tanakama says you're not allowed to kill it. You can't eat its meat because people are going to think that you don't need shechita. Reb Shimon's not worried about that. Shimon Shizuri, and he holds it's permitted without shechita, even though it's walking on the ground. Omer Masharshil L'Divya Omer Choshin L'Zera Av. Now, this is a little bit of a digression. We'll get back on track in just a minute. But Masharshil says L'Divya Omer, which is a sugya later on Daf Ayin Ches, that Choshen Lizera Av, that we see the animal as a product of both its mother and its father. Ben Pkua Abal Be'al Behema Mali. So Mali so here means a normal behema, regular behema, and a Ben Pkua male had a relationship with a regular female animal. Havlad ein lo takana. Okay, this is the machlokas that I referred to before between Rashi and Tosfos. Now, watch what goes on here. From the mother's perspective, the Ben Pku is already geschacht. From the father's perspective, no, just one second. Who's the Ben Pkua here? The Ben Pkua is the father. From the father's perspective, the Vlad doesn't need shchita. From the mother's perspective, she's not a Ben Pkua. The Vlad needs shchita. So Rashi learns that it's like two simanim. It's like one simon was already slaughtered, and the other simon has not yet been slaughtered. You know, the kind of innovation. And Rashi holds that that's called shehiyah. Shehiyah means when you wait between the shchita of one simon and the other, and that's one of the five psulei shchita. Tosas rejects Rashi, doesn't like Rashi here. And he doesn't believe that because the father is ben pekua, therefore one of the two simon is already considered slaughtered, but rather he holds that there's like a mix shchita on each one of the two simon. So you can't really do a shchita on any one of the simon. Okay. Now we get back on track, back to Reb Shimon Shizuri. Omar Abaye, Hakol modim bekolit ben pekua. The Rabbanan who disagree with Reb Shimon Shizuri hold that if the animal is walking on all fours, 5 years old, it's plowing fields, then if you kill the animal without shchita, people are going to think that you're allowed to eat the meat of an animal without shchita. However, says Abaye, even the Rabbanan agree, bekolit ben pekua. If you have a very strange kind of mutation, so to speak, and then everybody knows about it, and mutter, and therefore no one's going to be choshesh that you killed the animal without shchita. My timer, kol milsa desmia me. Anything that's so strange, and here we have a case of joint hooves, then everybody's going to know it's a ben pekua, and that's why it didn't need shchita. Ika the Amri, another version of Abaye, Omer Abaye, kol moda bekolit ben kluta ben pekua. You have to have a double freaky kind of thing that there's an animal with joint hooves that's an offspring of a mother who also has joint hooves. And they're both Ben Pekua. So it's a third generation of a Ben Pekua. My timer trait me a midkai together. They'll remember that this is a Ben Pekua situation because of the two freaky mutations over here. Omar Ze'iri Omar Abchanina. Halacha ki Reb Shimon ben Shizuri v'chein hoy Reb Shimon Shizuri mate b'bno uben b'no ad sof kol doros. Reb Shimon Shizuri holds that you don't need shchita, not for the ben pekua, not for the next generation of the ben pekua, not for the all generations of the ben pekua. Rabbi Yochanan Amari disagrees. No. Who mutar upnoas, only the first generation, meaning the ben pekua itself, that doesn't require shchita. Kill it, shoot it through the but beno already, that's a problem because nobody knows that's the son of Ben Pekua, and people are going to think that you're allowed to eat meat without shchita. Ada, interesting. I know Ada is a woman's name today, but in the Gemara's time, it was one of the Amorim. His name was Ada Bar Chavu. Havale Pekua denafal duba ale. Oh, he had a Ben Pekua, and it was attacked by a wolf, and it became a treifa. Also, the Rav Ashi, Amalei Zil Shachte. In other words, Rav Ashi paskins that this Ben Pekua that became a treifa because it was fatally attacked by a wolf requires shechita. Why? Because this Ben Pekua is walking on all fours, right? Like the case of 5 years old. And we don't paskin like Reb Shimon Shizuri, but rather like the Chachamim. On a Doraisa level, the Shechita of the mother works for the Ben Pekua. Just we're afraid that people think that you don't need Shechita. So it's only the Rabbana. So if Ashi says, go ahead and shecht it, even though it's a treifa. It was attacked by a wolf in a vital organ. But it doesn't really need shechita. And the whole reason it needs shechita is only because people might mistakenly think you don't need shechita. But now you're going to go ahead and shecht it. So nobody's going to think that you're allowed to eat meat without shechita. The shechita is meaningless because it's a treifa. It was attacked by a wolf. Nobody knows that. The attack by the wolf is not public knowledge, so we don't have to worry that people are going to think you could shecht the treifa. Amalei, Rav Ashi says, why do I need shechita? Homer Ziri, Omer Rav Chanina, Alochik Rav Shimon Zuri. V'chein, Hoy Rav Shimon Shizuri Matir, B'no, Ben B'no, Ad Sof Kol Adoros. V'afilu Rav Yochanan, Lo Komer Lo B'no. Aval Iu Lo. So we have a whole list of Chachamim, all accepted Rav Shimon Shizuri. You don't need shechita on a Ben Pekua. And we're not worried about what people will say. So why are you requiring me shechita? Amalei Ada says to him, Rabbi Yochanan L'divrei Rab Shimon Shizuri Kalmar. Rabbi Yochanan himself never accepted Rab Shimon Shizuri. He holds that a live Ben Pekua needs shechita because we're afraid people will make a mistake. Rabbi Yochanan said that you don't need shechita. He was saying, according to Rab Shimon Shizuri, a Ben Pekua itself, but not its offspring, does not need shechita. But he himself holds that even the Ben Pekua itself needs shechita. Ada's still in the, he's still attacking this. Reb Shimon Shizuri, Mishlesenu Allah Kemoso, Amalei Anoki Ha Sfirle. The Reb Yonasan Allah Reb Shimon Shizuri b'Mesukan u'Betrubas Maser Sholtmai. So only in two cases do we paskin like Reb Shimon ben Shizuri, even though he's a das yochid. That's called Mesukon and Trumas Meiser Shel Tmai. But it's not an absolute rule that we always paskin like Reb Shimon ben Shizuri, but rather what Rabbi Yonasan is trying to teach us is that, for example, in the case of Ben Pekua, the halacha is going to follow the Tanakama and not Reb Shimon Shizuri. And once the animal places its feet on the ground and it's been plowing a field for 5 years, then we have the gzera that people think if you eat it without shechita, you're allowed to eat without shechita. What's Mesukan, Disnan, Barishana Hayu Omrim, and Mishnah and Gittin on Daf Samach Hey. So this has to do with a man who gives a command to write a get, but he didn't say give the get. And Ayotze Bekolar, he's being taken out to be executed. V'yomer, and he says, Kisu get liishti. He doesn't want his wife to fall for yibum. Even though he didn't say explicitly give the get, but we understand that that's what he wanted to say. That was the original psak of the Mishnah Chazru Lomar. And then they said it's not only in the case of Yotzi Bekala, but Afam Farish Yotzi Shah, person is so torud. He's so preoccupied when he's going on a living on a caravan. He's going on what do you call that, Steve? When you go on the ship,
Cruise.
a cruise. He's going out on a cruise. And if he's going out on a cruise, and therefore he can't learn the Daf Yomi because he's on a cruise, and therefore what? He's so confused, and he's afraid he'll die on the cruise because in those days the cruise were not like today where like a hotel. You don't even know you're on the water, but in those days a cruise was very dangerous. So even though he was too confused to say Tanu Get, then he meant to say even a person who's dangerously ill, and then rolling him into the surgery room. Then if he says kisvu, he means kisvu tnu. He's too confused. And Trumas Meiser Shel Demai, this nan we learned in the Mishnah in Masechta Demai. That Trumas Meiser Shel Demai Shechazra Limkoma. Rabbi Shimon Shazuri Omer Af Bechol Sholo V'Ochlal Piv. So this is a case where there was a hefsed mammon, and in order to avoid a hefsed mammon, Rabbi Shimon Shazuri Paskin that we could rely on an Amoritz who's normally not relied upon. We don't think, and we don't rely on the fact that he was mafresh maser. But here, because of the loss of money, and it's only Trumas Maser of Dmai, then we will rely on the testimony of the Amoritz that he was mafresh, therefore was mafresh Maser. Okay, so if tomorrow we have a little more time, we'll go into the nitty-gritty details about Maser and Dmai and Trumas Maser Shel Dmai, and what does it mean here, Chazul and Koma and Reb Shimon Shazuri. But basically, tomorrow we'd like to start the Mishnah. And I have to tell you that I have bad news for myself because tomorrow we're going back to Elu Trefus.